And Paula is the Technical and QMS Manager at Intertek's Business Assurance Group. So Paula's going to join us now to chat with us about the transition to ISO 9001 2015. Paula, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me on. And it's an exciting time to talk about the technology you guys were talking about and how and why the 9001 2015 changed just because of that reason. So that's good lead-in. Thank you.
Perfect synergy right there. Well, let's get into it. I mean, I alluded to it in my introduction, but maybe you can expand on it a little bit. There's some pretty major changes in the terminology of this version of ISO 9001. So in your considered opinion, what are the most critical ones and what do they mean for users seeking to implement the standard?
I'm going to start with the first one. The new standard talks about documented information. And the documented information gives companies now the opportunity to do documents the way they need to do them. If you remember in the 9001 2008, it said you need this many procedures, you need this many records, and it was more strict on you must do it. The new standard says documented information, however you maintain it, your operating system, however your own procedures work for your organization will work. Okay, so geez, what a concept that it's actually making business sense. So documented information is one that's used in the whole standard. It's replacing everything that had to do with a document, whether it was quality planning, record, procedure, etc. Okay, so it's called documented information, flexibility. That's the two things to remember. Applicability replaces exclusion. I think it's worthwhile to spend a little time on that. Exclusions in the standard used to be, yeah, well, I can just go ahead and exclude this, right? Applicability now holds us to be a little accountable, say it no longer applies to me because it does not affect my product and service. So it's not just an offering to exclude. I need to justify why perhaps design is not applicable to my organization. So applicability is another one. Organizational knowledge is also one that jumps into mind. Organizational knowledge in the new standard is raising the bar. One of them that I think is really near and dear, especially I will say to the auditors' hearts, is preserving knowledge. I'm sure many organizations out there have many people that have worked for many years that, like all of us, have a lot of things in our heads. And now we need to come up with a path to preserve that knowledge. And it will be challenging to organizations, but the value down the road is there. So organizational knowledge would be another one. Risk-based thinking. Risk-based thinking has always been in the standard as preventative. Preventative action, if we all recall, in the old standard was a certain section. And everybody rushed to the end of the day, oh, what preventative did I did before the ISO guy gets here? Risk-based thinking now is throughout the whole standard. And it forces us to think about each process, what the risk is. In the early stages, in our planning what the risks are, it's going throughout the whole standard instead of one little piece where we're talking about preventative action. That's the big gain to this new standard. This is really my excitement in the new standard. Interested parties need to be determined. Interested parties are not anymore just, customers. We love them, of course we do. Suppliers, but interested parties can be to employees, it could be bankers, it could be the union. We need to understand who our interested parties are, as we need to capture that. And last but not least is context of the organization. Context of the organization is in the first part of the standard, and it helps, it has the organization actually identify their internal issues and their external issues. The standard actually uses the term issues, but you could think about it as influences because it's another one of those risk-based thinking thoughts that we have to come up with. In other words, what internal influences affect an organization? Well, it might be aging employees, it might be the environment, whatever the case is. But we do that for both internal and external. Okay, so when we get down into the program a little bit, we'll understand where that comes into play, especially to help our service organizations. So when they're not just making a product up front from the context of the organization, they can identify what's important to them in a service and what influences their organization.
Hey, Paula, the language of the standard has been I believe, streamlined and simplified and clarified in many spots. For example, the use of the term goods and services instead of product. How do you think the new language improves the usability of the standard, or does it?
It absolutely does. So, and that's a great question. So, goods and services is really what was needed. In the old standard, everything was based on a product, and there was this little bitty definition that said products mean services. But at the end of the day, service industries simply do not create a product that we think about. So what happened is people were following this based on the fact that they were a manufacturing organization. Service organizations, hospitals, etc., were like, that doesn't apply to me. So what the ISO world did is said we need to bring in the service industry. And that was one of the reasons, one of the biggest reasons for the 2015 change was not just technology and global economy, but it's the fact that there's so many service operations out there.
Well, Paul, this standard, of course, has changed a lot as we've been talking about it. So, in your opinion, what did users do if their QMS was moving along perfectly nicely in compliance with the 2008 version? I mean, for example, this is a big change that a lot of people are chattering about. What if somebody likes having, say, management representative? There's no call for management representative in the 2015 version, but what does somebody do if they like having a management representative?
Well, there you go, and that's please don't fire your management reps. Okay, so the new standard is just getting leadership engaged. Okay, it was always intended that top management was involved, but now there's direct leadership. They must understand process approach, risk-based thinking, all of the things. It's important the management rep has the responsibility and authority. The thing that cannot happen is when anybody goes for an audit, it's not just the good old quality guy anymore, okay? It might be very well that he's the guy that's leading it, but it needs to be showing that it encompasses the whole organization and they're living and breathing the standard. So that's one of the things in what you'll see in David's presentation is please don't fire your management reps, but please do make sure that they understand what the context is.
Well, Paula, Oddy, thank you again for joining us today. As you just referenced there again at the end of our interview, David Muell is going to be presenting on this very topic on your behalf this Thursday coming up on the 17th of November. The webinar is coming up right there, ISO 9001 2015, revision refresher, live webinar on the 17th, Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. Our good friends at Intertek, along with Dirk, is going to be hosting, and David Muell is going to be presenting from Intertek, so be sure to register for that one. Paula, Oddy, thank you again for joining us and giving us a little bit of insight into the language of the new 2015 version of ISO 9001 2015.
And thank you, gentlemen.
We'll talk to you soon.